I couldn't believe it. I never thought I would be in this situation. At 38 years old, I'd never been married, never had kids. It wasn't that I didn't want those things, life just hadn't lined up that way yet. But this was beyond anything I ever expected. I thought I had everything figured out until that phone call. It started innocently enough. Friday, after work, I was headed out for the weekend with my buddies. We planned these trips every few months, nothing wild, just a cabin by the lake, fishing, drinking, and games. A much-needed break for everyone. Usually, I stayed until Sunday and headed straight to work from there. But this time, I'd forgotten my laptop at the office. It wasn't a huge deal, but I figured I'd swing by and grab it, then head home. By 4 p.m., I was already on my way back, planning to be home by 6. I knew Rachel wouldn't have eaten by then, so I called in an order at her favorite Italian place and picked it up on my way. I thought everything was normal. I walked into the house, and I could hear her laughter from the kitchen. A pleasant sound, something I took for granted. I decided to surprise her, thinking it would be a sweet moment. But as I got closer to the kitchen, I started to overhear something I would never forget. My heart sank, and suddenly, everything I thought I knew about my life began to crumble. She wasn't talking to a friend or her sister, as I'd assumed. The words she spoke shattered everything. Last night was just amazing. He was such a considerate lover. I'm telling you, I've never had anything like it. We met on Tinder, and by the time we made it through the door, we barely made it to the sofa. Oh my God, it's huge. Like, twice as big as, well, you know. I'll definitely be taking him for a test drive again. I stood frozen, unable to move, as my world spun out of control. The food I had been holding slipped from my hands, crashing to the floor. She heard it. I could see the panic in her eyes as she spun around to face me. But I couldn't even process what was happening. Tears welled up, threatening to spill over, but I couldn't let her see. Without a word, I pushed her away, grabbed my laptop from the office, and left. My mind was racing. My heart felt like it was being torn from my chest. For the past 4 days, Rachel had been relentlessly texting and calling, but I hadn't answered once. I couldn't. I was staying at a motel a few towns over, hoping she wouldn't find me. My buddies and mom had called too, as she frantically searched for me. But I reassured everyone I was fine. The truth was, my life had just been ripped apart by the stupidest of things, a phone call. This was the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. We'd been together for 5 years, and I was planning to propose this year, on our 6th anniversary, on the 4th of July. I already had the ring, and my best friend and his wife, who had set us up, knew everything about the plan. I had it all figured out. Or so I thought. The thought of contacting her after everything, of hearing her out, made my stomach churn. How could I ever face her after what I overheard? The disgust, the betrayal, it was too much. I was broken. I had never dealt with infidelity before, and I didn't know where to turn. But I knew one thing, I couldn't go back. The comments I received from people who had been through this gave me some small comfort, but the pain was still raw. They said things like, "You'll never forget what you heard," and "She showed you who she really is. Be glad you found out now, and not later." They were right, of course. I'd heard everything I needed to hear. There was nothing left to say. One person even suggested that I ghost her entirely, to not even give her a chance to apologize. The advice was blunt, but it made sense. Closure, they said, was overrated. It was like that last slice of pizza at a party, everyone's searching for it, but by the time you find it, it's already gone, and you're left with nothing but greasy regret. Someone else told me to make a public statement, make it loud so there was no going back. Tag her in a post, make sure everyone knew what she did. And maybe they were right. It was tempting. But at that moment, I just wanted to disappear. I wanted to vanish, like a magician performing a trick, to make this nightmare vanish. But I was still standing, still reeling. Then came the update. I couldn't ignore it. The phone call had turned everything upside down. My buddies and I had gotten to the hotel, and after I explained what happened, they were just as stunned as I was. We talked about it all night. They asked if I'd noticed any signs, and to be honest, I hadn't. There had been no hints, no warnings. I didn't know what to do. I told them the proposal was off. And they understood. We spent the night at the bar, the shots flowing as I spiraled further. It wasn't pretty, but in that moment, it was the only thing that numbed the pain. My friends were getting calls from their wives, wondering where they were, but I couldn't focus on that. The only thing that mattered was the betrayal. The woman I thought I knew had completely shattered my reality. They stood firm. They backed me up, reassured me we were safe, and told me not to worry. One of them wanted to talk, to check if I was where I said I was. I wasn't in the mood for conversation, though. She kept insisting, "Rachel's worried. She just wants to come home." I told my friend to handle it, that I'd explain everything later. The night dragged on, and I found myself at the bar, making half-hearted attempts at flirting with the bartender, something I wasn't proud of. A couple of girls, traveling for work the next day, ended up spending some time with me before heading back to their lives. I thanked them, and they were gone. This week, one of my buddies, who was on his way to work, offered to check on the house we were renting. He'd be there before Rachel and I left for the day. Rachel had taken Monday and Tuesday off but was going back to work on Wednesday. As soon as I got the call, I dropped everything, went straight to the house, and began packing up my things. The house was a mess, dishes piled high in the sink, clothes scattered on the floor, takeout boxes everywhere. It took me 3.5 hours to clear out what was mine. As a final gesture, I cleaned up for Rachel. It wasn't much, but it was something. That afternoon, Rachel started flooding me with calls and texts, realizing I had packed up and left. I'm at my mom's house now, staying there until I figure out what comes next. I spoke with the landlord, but without Rachel's signature, he won't remove me from the lease. That means I'll have to cover my part of it until October. My mom's offered me a place until then. I feel like a 38-year-old moving back in with his mom. Just great, right? Life's been a real treat. I finally contacted Rachel Thursday night, told her we could meet up at a bar downtown. I told her one of my friends would be there to keep things civil. She didn't like that, complaining she wanted me to come home, talk things through so we could move forward. I told her if she wanted to see me, that's how it would be. Eventually, she agreed. On Friday, she showed up at the bar after my friend and I had been there for about an hour. I had already eaten and had a couple shots to calm myself. She made small talk, asking about me, about life. I cut her off. I had questions that needed answering. Her eyes welled up when I asked how long this had been going on. She swore it was the first and only time. I wasn't buying it. Cut the crap, I told her. I'm done. We're never getting back together. Just tell me the truth, so I can get my closure and move on. For a moment, she held her ground, but as I expected, the truth came spilling out. Every time I went on those trips for the past 2 years, she'd been convinced I was going to cheat, so she had her own fun too. I snapped. So that's it, huh? You're just using this as an excuse to sleep around? I asked her who she'd been talking to on the phone. She refused to answer. I pressed harder, asking if they'd used protection. There was hesitation. Sometimes, she said. I told her she was lucky I'd gotten an STD test. I'm clean. I don't have to worry, but she might. Before I left, I told her about my plans for the July 4th proposal. I showed her the ring, told her I was going to propose at her friend's party, the same place they'd introduced us. That's when she started crying. She begged for another chance. I told her I would always love her, but we were done. Now, she's been texting me all day, but I'll be blocking her soon. So here I am, sitting at home, eating wings and drinking beer, watching the fights. I'm rooting for Poirier, but honestly, I'm not sure. My life's a mess. Anyway, thanks for listening. I don't think I'll update again. I'm done talking to her. The community had some thoughts. Some knew exactly what she'd say, that it was just once. They always do, don't they? That classic move, blame shifting. It's not your fault, it's your partner's fault for giving them a reason. But no, that's not how it works. Someone else chimed in, telling me that it's good I'm clean, but what she did was vile. The worst part was her justifying her actions, claiming she thought I was going to cheat while I was away. They were right. The call she had, though, there's a chance it was one of my close friends' wives. She didn't want to name names, probably to avoid causing trouble. But her reaction at the bar, it spoke volumes. No remorse. If she truly regretted what she did, she would have broken down before I showed her the ring. She didn't crack until I mentioned the proposal, and even then, it was all about her begging for another chance. She didn't get it. Now, here's the latest. Rachel's no longer invited to the cookout. I'm free and clear. No more confrontation with her. Apparently, Rachel had told one of the wives there that she'd only cheated once, and it was a huge mistake. This same wife tried to get me to talk things over with Rachel. I wasn't having it. When I told her the whole truth, she called Rachel immediately. Rachel confirmed my version of events, and she was furious. She yelled at Rachel, telling her not to show up at the cookout on the 4th because I'd be there. Good riddance. What she did to me was disgusting, and I won't be forgiving her anytime soon. As for who was on the other end of the phone call, that's a mystery for now. I can't help but wonder, was it her sister? The thought gnaws at me. Every detail points in that direction. 2 of Rachel's friends, wives, actually, had been in on it, even though I stayed resolute, convinced they were unaware of what Rachel was up to. Apparently, on the Saturday nights I was away, they would host girls' nights at our place, long into the night, gossiping and sipping wine like it was a regular ritual. It wasn't until one of them, who wasn't even close to Rachel but still partook in these gatherings, confirmed it. That, coupled with the unsettling silence from Rachel's sister, is what has me thinking. I've tried reaching out to her 3 times now. Nothing. No response, no callbacks. Not a single word. And then her mother, bless her heart, called me. She was upset about the breakup, almost pleading, asking if there was anything they could do to change my mind. But I've made it clear, that ship has sailed. Monday came, and I dragged myself back to work, after what felt like an eternity of chaos. It was time to snap back into my routine. No more escaping through the bottle. My liver, well, it's going to thank me for that. It's been a wild ride, but I have this community to thank for helping me hold it together. You guys, all of you, have been a lifeline. I don't know if I'll update this thread again, but this might very well be the end of the road for this chapter. Fingers crossed. By the way, Rachel's been blocked on every platform. She has no way to contact me now. The host of the cookout called me the other day and said Rachel's not doing too well. Apparently, she had told them a different story, but when I set the record straight, it changed everything. Still, life goes on. As for me, I'm moving forward. Putting this behind me. Thank you again, everyone. Y'all rock. A few folks chimed in with their thoughts. First off, props to me for uninviting Rachel from the cookout. Who needs that kind of drama with their barbecue? Am I right? And as for Rachel's secret phone calls, sounds like her sister's the one who needs to answer some questions. Maybe she's perfecting the I had no idea speech while trying to mask the guilt. The denial in her mother's voice was almost palpable. But here's the thing, I'm back at work, no more booze, and taking control of my life. I've come a long way since the fallout. It's the start of something new. A thrilling new chapter in my story, Life After Rachel. Who needs liquid courage when you've got the unwavering support of a community like this one? Keep blocking, keep moving forward. I'll be okay. And if you're out there with your own story, share it in the comments below. Thanks for sticking with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I'll see you all in the next one.